2, 1, go.
Welcome everybody to the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters Thursday. I have a quote for you. It's directly related to today's topic. It says, "Walk with the dreamers, the believers, the courageous, the cheerful, the planners, the doers, the successful people with their heads in the clouds and their feet on the ground. Let their spirit ignite a fire within you to leave this world better than when you found it," by Wilfred Peterson. We're going to talk about who do you look up to spiritually and why. Stay tuned. Wasn't that a great quote? That was a great quote. I was like, I want to hang out with those people. Lord have mercy, where they at? Are they at Barnes and Nobles? Let's go meet up somewhere. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. I'm so delighted that you are here. Let us ground ourselves in this now moment. Stacy, how are you today?
I am good. I am great. I am what I say I am, right? I am in a peaceful place.
Awesome. I can see it in your face. You're like, all is well. I'm just sending out. This is good. Stan, where are you and what are you grateful for?
I am right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for being right here.
I love it. I love it. And Andrea, oh, I've missed you, Andrea. Welcome back. Virtual hug. Who are you going to hug today? Since I've already hugged you, you have to pay it forward.
I just did who I'm going to hug. You. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Hugging my virtual friends in the Daily Huddle.
Oh, yay. Well, we're hugging you right back. I am excited to be with you today because, as you know, Spiritual Matters Thursday is becoming a bit of a water cooler moment for the philosophers and the thinkers and the people who challenge their own assumptions in the world. You know, it's no small feat. So I want to know, where do you get that from? Who do you look up to spiritually and why? And what do you look up to spiritually? So of course, you know that one of my big things is about checking your assumptions, right? So I always talk about, like, let's define what it is that we're talking about. Let's be clear about what it is that we're talking about so that we don't operate from assumptions, or at least that we're clear about the assumptions from which we operate. So when I say look up to somebody spiritually, here's what I mean. Here's what I want you to think about. Who is someone who displays a spiritual quality that you respect or admire or would like to emulate? Maybe it's something that you do emulate and you just like to see it in other people. For example, you may consider yourself to be a really well-spoken person. And when somebody else is well-spoken, you're like, you know, I dig that about you. And the ability to bring reality into language is quite a talent. It is quite sometimes necessary in times that leave us speechless. And we're finding ourselves in speechless moments more and more in this society. Perhaps one of the spiritual qualities that you admire is the ability to sit with someone in whatever they are, in their experience, be there for that person without necessarily inserting yourself or your personality into whatever it is that they're going through. And that person feels seen or witnessed or held by your friendship or by the space that you are giving them. That's a spiritual quality that is very, very rare, I find. I find that it's rare. And when I find it, I cherish it. So what are some of the things that you look up to? Or what are the spiritual traits that you admire? Who has them? Who has them? I'm not going to do a lot of talking at the beginning. I'm just going to state the definitions, challenge our assumptions, and then let's go right into the conversation. Because I want to know who you hang out with that you admire spiritually, because I want to hang out with them too. I'm amplifying my circle of influencers. So I'm going to share with you that one of the people that I have long admired, she's gone from this physical plane. But when I was living in Miami, Florida, I went to a church. That was the first church that I went to that had a female pastor. Her name was Reverend Dr. Mary Tumpkin. You've probably heard me talk about her here because she and I had a very pivotal conversation in my life. This was in my early 20s. I was still kind of getting my sea legs. I had just left college and was in the corporate world, and my daughter was small. My sister had just moved to Miami and to live with us, and out of nowhere I got this stage 4 cervical cancer diagnosis. And she when I went to Sunday service, Dr. Mary Tumpkin had this presence, like she knew what she was talking about. Like in that Course in Miracles says, the truth needs no defense. And she stood in the things that she knew, the things that she talked about. And it wasn't like, don't you dare question her because she's authoritarian, but more like, why would you question her? Because she knows what she's talking about. And that level of confidence and clarity and defenselessness, gosh, man, I found this so attractive. I wanted to be like that it was like, I want to be so centered in what I'm talking about. I want to be so clear about where I stand that I don't need to explain it or defend it. And people will either get it or won't. And Dr. Mary Tumpkin exemplified that for me, because she wasn't the kind of person that would argue with people back and forth. She wasn't the kind of person that needed to be right about anything. She didn't need to convince anyone about anything. It was just like, here's where I stand. Where do you stand? Okay, that's different. Vaya con Dios. You know what I mean? That it was just kind of like, I get it, I see you. And it was the respect and the not needing to justify, explain, or defend. I really, really admire that about her. And I have attempted ever since to integrate that into my way of being. So that's what I mean about who do you look up to spiritually and why. So I gave you mine. Now who's gonna go next? I want to see some hands being raised. I want to see somebody coming in. Come on in, Sorrel.
One of my favorites, and I have several, but today I'm picking Desmond Tutu.
Mm-hmm.
Desmond Tutu, for me, spiritual quality is the power of forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
and the courage it takes to forgive the unforgivable. I admire that quality, and on a daily basis and in my work in Haiti, I seek to emulate that, and I seek to create the environment that Desmond Tutu created alongside Nelson Mandela to rid South Africa of the plague of apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't there, but I could imagine what it took.
Yeah.
For someone who committed atrocious crimes,
Yeah.
to have the courage to come forward and confess those crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And now that takes courage. But you know what else I think took a lot of courage is for the victims of those crimes who are present, listening,
Mm-hmm.
to muster up the courage to forgive that perpetrator.
Yeah.
And then here's triple the courage, right? I'm imagining that for that human being who had to confess the crimes, it took something for that human being to forgive himself or herself.
Mm.
So it's this spiral
Ooh, yeah.
of forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
that creates a lot of power wherever it is that I admire and that I look up to. And anchor, and find that it anchors me every time I go to it.
I love that. And knowing what I know about you, Sorrel, I can hear the germinal seed in that whole interaction is speak to what is. And then when I can speak to what is, meaning here's what I've done, here's what I'm forgiving myself for, et cetera, then I can create a different possibility, a bigger possibility. But only when I ground myself in what is. I love that. Thank you. I like that. And I'm loving the I told you before we started recording, I'm loving the bookshelves behind you. I don't admire them spiritually, I admire them architecturally. Giovanni, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. What a great inquiry, a difficult inquiry for me. But when I was looking at it, there are two people that I really, it's not like I look up to them. I don't want to put them in a pedestal, but I really like how they have managed whatever they call spirituality that I connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And one is Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
I follow his stuff, I read his stuff, and he really gives me this access to the now. And he connects the now to spirituality. That there's no, he alludes to, he says it differently. He alludes to that at any moment you have access to spirituality, at any moment of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I have grown a lot in that, in his writing, in his clearing, in what he does. At the same time, I don't know as much, but whatever I know, I really like, which is Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm X's spirituality to me is the shit.
Mm-hmm.
He stands for what he believes, and he's forceful, and he was forceful, right? And he had to say what he had to say, but there was this, in my experience of my studying him, there was this calmness about his way of looking at life, his truth.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like he was fighting for something, he was standing for something. Agree or disagree, he was calm about it. He didn't have, this is where I stand. And he's forceful. And he might not be, but this is where I stand. And I really like that thing. So it's a weird mixture between all is well, however the world is, Eckhart Tolle, to Malcolm X, I'm going to stand here and you're going to hear it out loud. So this is kind of this mixture I have in my head.
I love that. I love that. And it's interesting. I was just having a conversation earlier with someone earlier this week where I was saying that all the good qualities that we ascribe to Martin Luther King were actually lived by Malcolm X. And Martin Luther King was actually like a brand that we created, but that's another sermon for another Sunday. Thank you so much.
That's how I feel also about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So one of these days we'll talk about the anti-hero and how much of a hero they actually are. That's awesome. Who else wants to share? Who do you look up to spiritually and why? I like this conversation, man. You guys are giving people to research and stuff. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, I will jump in. I'm thinking about Dr. Miles Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
He is he passed in 2014.
Yeah.
Was a evangelist from the Bahamas, and he was somebody he was somebody I looked up to many years ago, and who I'm looking up to now as I'm revisiting his books.
Mm-hmm.
And he always spoke on purpose, and he broke down the Bible in a way that was about the wisdom of the Bible, and that was very applicable, and I could understand him. And I'm attracted to wisdom and knowledge and wisdom and power, but in the ways that are applicable. And he is somebody I'm revisiting now as I'm rethinking and evaluating my purpose. Like I said, I just turned 50, so it's like I'm evaluating everything all over again, and I'm realizing that I had some wrong ideas about a lot of things. But
America, do you hear this? He just turned 50. What in the world? Go on. I'm got to sit with my shot.
So I'm revisiting his writings and thinking about purpose, and he is somebody that I am looking up to in this very moment. And shouts out to Giovanni for mentioning Malcolm, because he's when people ask, if you could go back and meet anyone in history, he's one of the main people I would meet. And it's because of those reasons that the transparency and the honesty that he spoke in the moment was bold. And yeah, he's one of my biggest heroes. So I'm done.
Awesome. Miles Monroe. Awesome, man. Thank you for presencing him. Who else wants to share? Hi, Andrea. Welcome.
Hello. So to answer your question, I actually really got deep into thinking truly leaders or people that I follow, and I was struggling because for me, when I was growing up back in Colombia, spirituality was synced to religion. So I immediately went to my roots about religion, and I grew up Catholic. And so I went to Santa Teresa de Jesus, which was the saint in my school. But then I went into, I'm not anymore that much of a Catholic, truly going to church every weekend. I still have some beliefs around the religion, but spirituality is not religion. And that's where I started evolving maybe 7 years ago. And I have not found one truly person that I follow, but I'm forcing myself to start studying and reading. So right now, 2 people that I have found. Where I'm going with this is, first it was attached to religion. Now my spirituality honestly is attached to evolvement and evolving as a person. That also comes from business reading. So I attach spirituality with some business leaders and coaches. And because of them, I've learned, or I met 2 by reading Pema Chodron and Victor E. Frank, which are, even though we're related to a business type of reading, I found spirituality through that. So that's what I wanted to share. For me, it's kind of a spirituality now is everything. It's not just religion or business. It's whatever helps you get to your next better. Yes. And I'm finding right now that connection with the evolution from religion to a business environment. And the 2 that I'm reading right now, I'm forcing myself to read. I'm not a really good reader, but I'm a person of habits, and that I can say. So I force myself to read 30 minutes a day. And right now I'm reading Victor E. Frank's Man's Search for Meaning. So that's right now where I am in my spirituality.
Wow, you said a mouthful, Andrea. Here's what I heard and everything that you said. Because, this is so exciting. I don't even know where to begin. Because a lot of times people start with, like you said, we start with like this set of rules or this cultural
constraint.
That is imputed on us because of where we were born or our parents, or this is just what we do in this family, etc. And eventually we walk ourselves into the set of rules of our own making, right? And what's so interesting to me, what's sweetly ironic about that, is that the etymology of the word religion means to bind together. And so what you just said is, I take wisdom from, business, from these other places, and you're literally walking religion because you've bound together the pieces that make sense to you, that resonate with your soul. And that is the true spirit of being a quote unquote religious person. So I just loved how the nuance of everything that you were saying. So thank you for sharing. Awesome. And Cece is here. Cece's not on a treadmill today, y'all. This must be her rest day or something. I don't know. Let's find out. You're not on a treadmill today, Cece.
No, not on the treadmill. I'll do it later on. I really like this topic. Actually, I am part of a quote unquote religion, but it's not. I'm not religious. It's a different.
Yeah.
And so what I do, I take actions that work. Action means getting up in the morning, spending time meditating, listening for God, listening to God, not me talking all the time, and praying. And I do read at least a couple hours a day. I read the Bible. I study to show myself approved so that I have an understanding of what God's telling me, not somebody else's version of it. So I don't depend on listening to the quote unquote pastor. What I do is I go in to give contribution. That means in praise and worship, and be in presence, because this is what I'm bringing. And in the business, I'm bringing something to somebody every day, bringing myself, bringing the services, and I use this seed, which is I make from business, to sow into the things that God would have me to sow into, and that's the church and other things. But I personally, and my business does give a minimum of 10% plus offerings. So this is what God has allowed me to do. And as I continue to evolve, grow, the business gets bigger, and I get bigger and better as I learn, as I seek Him first for everything. And, you know, whatever things is going on, I know God will give me an answer to. So thank you so much for this topic.
That's lovely. I love that. It's something that you said, Cece, reminded me of a story in the early days of my business. I remember one of my business partners, we also believe in the law of abundance and in the law of correspondence, et cetera, et cetera. And so one time we were working with a client who was having a hard time paying us. And we were like, we need to get paid. We have bills, we have payroll, you know, all this other stuff. And the person sent in a check that was like 1/10 of what they owed us. And my business partner, I never forget it. He said, well, if it ain't the harvest, it must be the seed. And if we turned around and instead of using that money to pay bills, we used that money to give. And eventually, you know, it kind of like unblocked other stuff that we were expecting to receive, et cetera. So I love that you bring this, the lawfulness of it into it. You know, one of the things that I talk about with in my coaching, et cetera, is actually leveraging universal law. And that it's not just something that is like a philosophical exercise, but you can actually walk yourself into the kingdom of your own consciousness with those parameters. So thank you for presencing that. Stan, I'm looking at you, kid. What you got?
That one's a kind of tough one for me, Doc, because I don't think I'd ever really thought about that before. But I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Desmond Tutu one day, and a private conversation with him, just him and I, one-on-one in a private room. I was the security manager. Yeah, I was the security manager at John F. Kennedy International Airport for the Transportation Security Administration, and I was an inspector there. And I was responsible for seeing to it that everything was right in order for him to come on the British Airways flight. And so he and I got a chance to actually sit down in a room one-on-one, just him and I, and talk. And this guy was the greatest guy, one of the greatest, most smoothest, calm spirit I ever met. And I kept trying to talk about him, and he wouldn't let me talk about him. He said, Stan, and he referred to me by my first name. And he called me Horace, that's my first name. He said, I want to talk about you. Tell me about it. I mean, he's just a great guy. So I love that guy from having met him personally and know something about his life. But Mahatma Gandhi is also someone who was really, really a big person, stands out big in my mind.
Yeah,
really
how come?
As a spiritual leader. Because I felt that he was really grounded, just super grounded and immovable in his determination to continually let nothing destroy his peace and his position and his place in his relationship with the Creator. I found him to be like really unshakable in that, and he stood by that, and I think it allowed him to have clarity on every other issue.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, I'm finding a theme in the things that we are all sharing today. And that is two parts. One is clarity and the other is contribution. And a lot of times we don't think of these things, of these personal qualities, as though they are spiritual characteristics. And yet, to Andrea's point, your spirituality is everywhere you go. You can find it in a business book. Awesome. Well, so here's some questions that I have. I don't know if we have anything on the chat that I want to address. Somebody's going to have to clue me into it. But here's some things that I want you to consider. This is the other side of checking for assumptions, right? Is checking for feedback. That's the other side. everything that you just said about whoever it is that you admire is a characteristic that you possess. You wouldn't be able to recognize it in another if you didn't have it yourself. Because at the extent of, look at Giovanni, somebody cue the hero music. Because to the extent that we are all reflections and mirrors of one another, right? I wouldn't be able to see a pimple on the mirror if it wasn't on my face, right? And in the same way, I wouldn't be able to see, to recognize, and recognize means to see again, to know again, etymologically, as you know. I wouldn't be able to recognize clarity or contribution in somebody else if I didn't first possess it. So forgive me, but it was a little bit of a trick question. It wasn't really about who you look up to spiritually. It's really about what's the characteristic that you possess that you would like to amplify in this world, such that you would see it in someone else. Got you again. The law wins again. So I want you to think about the things that you were saying, the things that you were saying about people that you admire. I like clarity. I like contribution. I like someone who stands in their convictions. I like somebody who walks their talk. I like somebody who's like, no matter what, this is who I am. This is what I stand for, et cetera. And not from a place of stubbornness, but again, from a place of clarity, right? From a place of conviction. So look at the places where you've been clear. Look at the places where you've not been clear. And what have you made more important than your clarity? What have you made more important than the contribution that you know that you're here to give? Alternatively, the things that you don't look up to, the things that you dismiss or feel disdain about people, are the things that you possess that you've not fully integrated. And I love the conversation about, sometimes people talk about like our strengths and our weaknesses. And I remember someone said to me a long time ago that our weaknesses are really just our strengths that haven't been properly modulated. Kind of like how when you tune a guitar and you have to kind of like, do this thing with the chord in order to get the proper note. In the same way, whatever it is that you deem as a quote unquote weakness is just a strength that hasn't been modulated in that way. So perhaps you may not, conversely, just like we talked about today about the things that we admire in someone else spiritually, maybe the things that you look down upon. Think about that. That's going to be the homework for you today. Think about the things that you don't like, that you don't admire, that you actually look down upon instead of looking up to. And whatever that thing is, how can that be a strength when it's properly modulated? How can that be a strength when it's properly modulated? So I'll give you an example. Just like I like clarity and I like people standing in their convictions, I don't find it fun when somebody's wishy-washy, when it's one thing one day and one thing another, et cetera, et cetera. But when properly modulated, I can see how that can be seen as responding to whatever is present, being flexible enough and agile enough to respond to what's in the room without getting stuck in a particular place just because I want to be clear, right? And so I can see how when properly modulated, wishy-washiness can really just be agility, right? And so I want you to think about the things that you look down upon when it's properly modulated. How can it be a strength? That's going to be your homework. And you know what? Come back next week. We'll talk about it. Because here's what we're going to do. In the summer, I don't know if you guys did this when you were children, but when I was a child, my parents sent me to summer school. Did anybody go to summer school when you were little? Right? So we're going to have a summer series here in the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters, going with the alliteration of the S, spiritual summer series. Get it? I'll talk about that more next week. But for now, make sure that you give some thought to the strengths that you admire, the things that you admire, and then the things that you don't, and how can you modulate it to leverage it into a strength. In the meantime, I'm going to call up Sorel and Giovanni back to me because these 7 things. I only remember the 8th one, and this because I added it. It's love always. Thank you, Lizette. Stress less. I don't want you to stress at all, quite honestly. We could just give that one up. That's another weakness that can be modulated, right? Because when we stress, we're really committed to a particular outcome. You can be committed to an outcome without being stressed about it. You can also laugh out loud and eat more plant-based, give, and give some more. Sleep your 7 hours. If you're doing 8, that's extra credit. I love it. I love it. Move your body. Embodied wisdom is the one that you cannot argue with when you know you know. And then, of course, check your assumptions. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We love you at the Daily Huddle. See you next week.
Thanks, Doc.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good to
Talk to you
see
later.
you.